Hello and welcome to episode 81 of the Nurse and Strengthen podcast. Today I'm recording the first of a two-part series that I can't believe I haven't recorded already, you guys. I went to look for an podcast episode that talked about all about my weight gain, when I gained that 50 pounds in a year and what I did to lose the weight. And I was shocked because I couldn't find it. So this is what we're doing today. So today is part one. I'm going to talk about the weight that I gained, how I felt during that, why I gained the weight, and some things that I tried. And then part two will continue that story because it's kind of a long story. And this episode will show you that I truly tried so many random things. Okay. So if you're sitting there listening and you're like, I have tried everything to lose weight, you haven't, because I guarantee you, I'm going to tell you some things that I did that you have not tried. Okay. So story leading up to it. If you're new here and you don't even know what I'm talking about, back in 2018 into 2019, actually 2018 to 2019, I gained 50 pounds in 52 weeks. It makes for a pretty good story now looking back on it, but during the time, it was absolutely horrible. One of the hardest things I've ever been through. So let's go ahead and just dive right in. So leading up to the weight gain, I was competing in bodybuilding in the bikini division. Now, before you tune out and think, oh, well, how's this story going to apply to me? I don't compete. You don't have to compete in order to go through what I went through. Okay. And I'm going to kind of tie that back to you here in just a minute. But I had been competing all year. Okay. My first competition was, I started prep in January. My first competition was early June, end of May. And my last one was early September. Okay. So I had maintained a very, very lean physique throughout the entire summer. Now, just to kind of break this down, break down like weights for you, I'm going to share my body weight, but I don't want you to, as a listener, to interpret that to mean anything about you or anyone else. Okay. I'm going to share my base body weight where I feel best, but that doesn't necessarily mean that that is a good target body weight for you or for anyone else. Okay. So are we clear on that? So just because I felt good or not good at a certain body weight does not by any means mean that should be how you feel at that body weight. Does that make sense? Before I want to clear that up before we go into numbers. Okay. So for me personally, I'm 5'6". Before I had kids, I was always in like the mid to low 130s. Okay. After having kids, I was always right around 140. After every baby, I got down to about 140. After every competition, I kind of hung out around 140. Okay. During this summer when I was super, super lean, I competed at 116. 116 at 5'6". I was just like, so tiny, like not in a good way. I was so small. I never intended to maintain that weight. Okay. That was a competition weight, but I did stay there for way too long. Through the entire summer, I was probably around 120-ish. And that was way too lean for my body. And that was the stressor for me. For me, the stressor was staying very lean for way too long. Okay. If you find yourself relating to some of my story and you're like, but I didn't compete, that couldn't be the same. It is the same, because this thing that we have in common is that we both were under, me and you and whoever else went through the same experience, we're both under, our bodies were under a lot of stress. Okay. For me, that stress was being lean for too long. For you or someone else, that stress might be a nasty divorce or a death in the family, or maybe you're having struggles with maybe some teenage children or something like that. A job change, chronic undereating, which is kind of the similar to competing background. Maybe you've been over exercising and undereating for way too long. You're a typical female who thinks you have to eat 1,200 calories. And so you've been undernourishing your body. All of these things are stresses on the body. Okay. So going back to my story, my last competition was early September. After I finished competing, the plan was to reverse diet my calories back up to maintenance. So what reverse dieting means, it's an increase of calories at lots of different paces. Some people go so slow, some people go faster, but basically it just means reversing your calories from a deficit back up to your maintenance amount. Okay. I fully intended to gain some weight back during that process. So I reversed calories from early September to about mid-October, and I gained weight up until about like the mid 130s. Okay, so about 15 pounds or so from kind of where I was sitting. Again, I competed on show day at 116, but that was just kind of a one-day thing. Got back up to about mid 130s, hung out there for 3 or 4 weeks, and I was like, sweet, I did it. We reversed. We've maintained, kind of found my happy place. This is great. Okay. About a month later, in November of 2018, more weight gain started happening. And now, in retrospect, I can look back at pictures from that fall of 2018. And even though my body was still on the leaner side, my face was very round. And a roundness that I don't normally see in my face at that weight, if that makes sense. And that was kind of a clue of what was coming. The elevated cortisol, the hormone imbalances. I'm going to talk you through all that. So come like November, nothing's changed in my nutrition, my workouts, my sleep, my habits, nothing. I started gaining again, get up to 140, then 145. And I'm like, okay, here I am. I've gained 10 pounds. And it was probably January by this point, and I'm up 10 pounds. And I'm like, what's going on? Why is this happening? I didn't change my eating. I'm still tracking macros. I'm still, fueling my body well, exercising, sleeping, all the things. And I was like, what's happening? Then, a month later, I'm 150. A month later, I'm 155. I remember laying on my bed in tears thinking, if I could just figure this out, if I could just get this weight gain to stop, then I would be happy. I could figure out how to maintain this. I could figure out how to love my body and feel comfortable here. I could find clothes that I felt confident in. I just need the weight gain to stop. That was my desperation. I don't know if you've been there or not, but I was desperate. I was literally hopeless. I was like, here I was, a trainer, trying to do all the things. I was showing up on social media. I was helping women reach their fitness goals. Yet I was gaining 5 pounds a month, every single month. Got to 155, got to 160. And I was like, when is this going to stop? And it wasn't stopping. It did stop in the summer when I hit about 165. Okay. Up a solid 50 pounds. Actually, it was less than a year, 50 pounds in about 10 months or so. And then it kind of hung steady. So again, the underlying reason for that weight gain was me being lean for so long. That was the stress on my body. It put me into early perimenopause at 38, 39 years old, which is how old I was at the time. And like I said, for you, the stress might be something different. It might be, I already went through the reasons, but it might be a death, a divorce, a job change, a big move for your family that's really hard on your kids. All these things can be stressful enough that combine that with being in your late 30s, early 40s, mid 40s, late 40s, somewhere around those perimenopausal ages can really wreak havoc on your system. Okay. So let's talk about what hormone imbalances I had and what I did about it. Okay. So hormone imbalances, I found these out through blood labs and through saliva testing. Okay. So I had low free T3. So that's a thyroid hormone. Your free T3 is the one that has a direct impact on your metabolism. My free T3 was in the high ones. Ideally, you want it from a 3 to a 4, somewhere around there. And mine was very low. I was also estrogen dominant. It was relative estrogen dominance. My progesterone was completely bottomed out. I think it was like 0.5 or 0.08 or something like that. It was really, really low, point something. I had high insulin and high blood sugar. My blood sugar was over 110 fasted. I can't remember off the top of my head what my insulin was. I had high cortisol. It was in the high 20s. Ideally, we want that between like 8 and 15 or so. And I had horrible digestion. I had farts that could clear a room. No joke. I had constant, like daily, just gurgling and bloating in my stomach, and it never felt good in my tummy. I always felt like there was just like junk in there, right? You could just like feel it, like almost like if you've been pregnant before, the first time you feel your baby start to move, it's like, little like bumps and, your stomach kind of moves around. That's how I felt all the time. Actually, it was more from like noon on in the day. I just felt like constant bloating, gassiness, major constipation. I was only pooping every 3 days or so, which is not normal, by the way. And so what did I do about it? Let's talk. So I gained weight from September 2018 up until like July of 2019. So in February of 2019, I met this coach, and I'm not going to use names. I'm happy to share. All of my coaches were so incredibly helpful, and they all taught me something. this coach that I worked with from February until about July, August or so, she was very big in the biohacking world, and we tried all sorts of things. And I think you're going to get a kick out of some of these. And they all helped. They did. I don't feel like any of them really addressed the root issue, but they absolutely all helped. I did continue to gain weight during the entire time. Again, not to say these didn't do anything. They didn't like stop the weight gain, but I think they all did something. And I'm going to talk to you about what each of them did. So again, I'm going to list through the things that I tried, not saying you should do all these things or you should do any of these things. I just want to show you what I went through in order to find out what actually worked and how we created the protocols that we use today with our clients going through the same thing. So we started work on digestion and insulin blood sugar issues. And so we tried short-term keto first. That was the idea. The idea was only to do it for 6 weeks, 8 weeks. My blood sugar and insulin were so high and my digestion was horrible. So we never meant to do it long-term, right? So true keto, we did true keto, which is keeping carbs to total carbs, not net carbs, to about 20 grams of carbs or less. And then we did about 20% protein, and then the rest was fat. So fats were over 100 grams, and it was tough. It was like I was using a lot of oils, using fattier meats, but I was able to find foods that I liked. You know, it was very different for me, but it helped my digestion. It helped my digestion. That's kind of a hard word to say, digestion. It helped my digestion actually a ton. My bloating completely was gone. I think if I'm remembering right, I think I was still kind of constipated, but it really helped with the bloating and the gassiness. And then we started to work carbs back in. My blood sugar came back up again. So we're like, okay, not quite ready for that. Even just by adding more veggies, my fasted blood sugar was up in like the 110s. So that's really high. Ideally, you want your blood sugar like 75 to 90 fasted. And so that's really high, especially by just adding in more veggies. We're like, okay, that's not good. So we tried a longer time at keto, and we tried supplements to help with managing blood sugar and insulin levels. And I kept gaining. So keep in mind, I was eating at maintenance during this time because I was trying to heal things. When you're eating in a calorie deficit, that's just one more stress on your body. And the fewer stresses you can take off your plate, the better. And so I was eating at maintenance. So I wasn't really expecting like some major fat loss during these times, but it was disheartening to continue to gain, right? I focused a lot through these months on self-love and affirmations and really trying to find peace with, leaving that ultra lean competition body in the past and trying to find peace with where I was at now and what I was going through. And I remember very clearly one day laying on my bed and thinking, okay, why am I going through this? I am a big believer that everything happens for us, not to us. And so I'm like, okay, if this is happening for me, like, why? Why do I have to deal with this? And, thinking through it, I was like, I had this clear idea or thought that I just felt it's so that I can figure this out and help other people. And I still felt hopeless. I still felt desperate and discouraged, but that really helped give purpose to my pain so that I knew, okay, I'm going through this. I am going to figure this out. I am not going to rest until I figure this out because I am on this journey to be able to help you with the same thing, if that makes sense. So I focused a lot on that. Like, why am I going through this? Figuring out how to love this process and enjoy it and find the good in it. I remember that summer of 2019, sitting out in the sun and getting vitamin D on my chest and like quote unquote tanning was part of my protocol. My coach literally had to put in the recovery and the self-love and the affirmations and the being in the sun and all that kind of stuff as part of my protocol. So we tried all sorts of things this summer. After the keto, we tried times in a deficit to see if it would work. Spoiler alert, it didn't, kept gaining. We tried times at maintenance. We tried times of not tracking at all because we're like, well, maybe just tracking is too stressful and we need to take that stress off my plate, right? All the things. Keep in mind throughout all this time, I was continuing to sleep a lot. I was really focusing on rest and recovery. I was lifting weights. I was doing all the things, right? All the things, continuing to gain. During the summer, I tried more of like that intuitive approach, like I mentioned, sometimes we hear about people that are so focused on something that it almost stresses you out, right? And so I was like, okay, let's see if I can just focus on like how I feel and how my clothes fit and just fueling my body and just not tracking, but focusing on like portion sizes and getting plenty of protein and being outside, yada, yada. Didn't work. I mean, didn't work for the weight gain. It was great for, my mindset and all that kind of stuff. But as far as the weight gain, didn't work. Cortisol was really high throughout all this time. So we tried this one protocol. It was very interesting. Melatonin is kind of like the opposite of cortisol. If you think about, cortisol spikes in the morning to kind of wake you up, get you going for the day. And throughout the day, it's supposed to slowly come down and then kind of bottom out at night. So as cortisol is bottoming out at night, your melatonin production rises to help you get sleepy and help calm you down, get ready for sleep. And then melatonin goes down in the morning as cortisol comes up. One thing, just a little side note, being out in the sun throughout the day, letting the sun hit your skin, morning sunlight, all this can help with that cortisol and melatonin with those curves and your sleep-wake cycles. So we tried a protocol where to focus on bringing cortisol down, where I had 1 milligram, I believe it was 1 milligram. Yeah, not gram, it's 1 milligram, 1 milligram of melatonin every hour that I was awake. Oh gosh, you guys, that was crazy. I do think it helped bring cortisol down a little bit. I honestly can't remember numbers, but I do think it helped. But we did that for 2 weeks and I was a zombie. If you can imagine a state of like really tired but awake, that is like the state that I lived in. And I remember thinking, working with my coach, trying to find a 2-week period where I didn't have a lot of like heavy work going on. I could kind of like just relax and kind of chill and stuff like that. That's when I did it. And it was the weirdest feeling. I remember like not being able to put full sentences together. It was kind of like you're falling asleep all the time. And again, I can't remember my cortisol levels. I do think it helped, but it was pretty interesting. And I can't remember where we got that idea. It was from, I don't know. I don't want to call out names because I might be wrong, but it was interesting. During that time when we're focusing on cortisol, another kind of crazy thing happened. I got this weird sore on my lip that wouldn't go away. It felt kind of like a canker sore. I'm not really a canker sore person, so I'm not 100% sure, but it wouldn't go away and it kind of just kept drying and flaking. And of course, like, what do you think of when you have a sore that doesn't heal and it kind of keeps flaking? Like, you worry about cancer, right? And so I was super stressed. I went to the dermatologist. They gave me a cortisone cream and they were like, try this. If it doesn't go away, then come back in. And so I went home. I was trying it. I was putting it on like whatever the direction said. I can't remember. And it did go away. And I was like, okay, cool. So I stopped using it. And then during that time after I stopped using it, I started getting some rashes, like just weird rashes, like on the back of my thigh, on the back of my arms, just kind of like these crazy rashes. They weren't itchy. Well, they kind of were itchy. They weren't like super crazy itchy, but it was uncomfortable for sure. I got these weird rashes and I was like, that's odd. Okay. Also, I had been off that cortisone cream for a while. It was never meant to be like a long-term solution, right? But the sore came back and I was like, oh, dang it. So I went back to I didn't go back to the dermatologist actually. I just started using the cortisone cream again. During this time, my coach was like, let's check your cortisol levels again. So I did a 4-point diurnal saliva test. So it's through ZRT Labs. You can find it if you just Google it online. And what you do is you spit in this little test tube 4 times a day. So you do it in the morning, around lunchtime, around dinner time, and around bedtime. So you're trying to get like that nice, pretty bell-shaped curve, right? I did that, sent in my saliva, got the test back. Oh my gosh, you guys, my cortisol levels were in the thousands. I was freaking out. I'm Googling because it came to me on like a Friday late afternoon, the results. And I was like, oh my gosh, like the worst time to get crazy results, right? I'm Googling stuff. I'm Googling like Cushing's disease. I'm Googling cancer and tumors and all these things. I'm freaking out. Okay. Monday morning, someone from ZRT Labs calls and they're like, hey, we're looking at these results and these are a little concerning. And I was like, yeah, you think? I didn't sleep all weekend because of them. And they're like, tell me this really quick though. Have you been using any sort of cortisone cream around your mouth? And I was like, yes. Oh my gosh. Yes, I actually have been. And I told them, and they're like, okay, don't worry about this test. We're going to send you another one. Do this again. that can happen when you're putting on this cream around your mouth. And so I started Googling, you guys, cortisone cream, it does increase your cortisol levels. I don't know how that affects, I don't know at what, I don't, take it for what it is, but that's what gave me such high cortisol readings was using that cream, especially around my mouth when I was spitting into a test tube. Crazy. I mean, it makes total sense, but I was freaking out for a minute. Anyway, so here we are with rashes, with a cream. I'm like, what is going on? My mom, my autoimmune issues run in my family. And so my mom was like, I used to get rashes too. Call my autoimmune doctor. He can just put you on this medicine. You'll feel so much better. And I was like, no, I don't want to do that. I don't want to have an autoimmune disease. I mean, if I do, I do. But I was like, I really want to feel like try and figure this out with my nutrition. And so I was Googling, working with my coach, and we were like, I don't know if this will work, but let's try 2 to 3 weeks at doing carnivore. So that is no plants. I actually don't even remember all the rules of carnivore. It was basically just meat. And it was beef, and I don't even remember. It was horrible. I hated it, but I did it. I did it because I was desperate. If you want something bad enough, if you're in enough pain, you will do the hard thing. You will. And I learned that through all of this because I was like, I don't care what I need to do. I have to figure this out. And so I did it. I did carnivore for 3 weeks. The rashes went away. The lip sore went away. They've never come back. Okay. Pretty crazy, right? But I hated carnivore. I didn't want to keep doing it. Still gaining weight. So the thing with carnivore, keto, that kind of thing is healthy thyroid levels and healthy cortisol levels require carbs. I have another episode. Oh gosh, I should have looked it up. I can't remember off the top of my head. I'll put it in the show notes, but I had another episode on what to eat for specific hormone imbalances, and carbs are so important for proper hormone function. So we started adding carbs back in. And then September of 2019, 1 year after my last show, things started to change. And so that's where I'm going to end right here because I don't want to make this one too long, but I have a part 2, which is what started to change, what I did to finally lose the weight, because I wanted to have this whole episode geared towards, all the things that I tried. So that when you come to me for help, that I've tried all the things. I'm going to go into what actually worked, how we figured out how to get to the root of everything in the next episode. But for now, this is episode 81. If it was helpful to you, please let me know on social media. I would love to hear your story and maybe give you some tips on how I can help. Okay. I'll talk to you guys next week.